For the fourth episode of the Amalgam podcast, I have Michael Dyrland from Dyrland Productions. Mike is a photographer and an aerial cinematographer. What that means is he pilots drone and he travels the world creating amazing content. We talk about his past projects and we talk about some of his future projects as well. I hope you enjoy the episode, and please follow Mike at Dyrland Productions and DP Drones. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. This is Ep004. I've got Michael Dyrland with me. He's a videographer. Most importantly, he's an aerial cinematographer. What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
Oh, doing real good. Yeah, it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. You're in Bellingham right now, right? Or are you in Seattle right now?
Currently in Bellingham right now, taking it back to the roots where we
started.
Yes.
Oh man. Yeah, so I'm in Spokane and we're recording via FaceTime audio for everybody. Hope it sounds good. I wanted to have Mike on the show because he has an Instagram page called DP Drones, and I think with all the drone photography and stuff coming out, I think it's one of the coolest things that has been brought to the consumer level equipment, and Mike's got some amazing stuff. Everybody should check it out. And can you tell us some of the other things you do along the lines with aerial cinematography?
Yeah, definitely. Aerial, like cinematography, some people call it drones, whatever you want to call that. But it's been a pretty interesting couple of years because I would say even 4 years ago, drones were kind of like this new wave of not only technology, but at least for like photo and video, is like this new tool. And for me, at least, it's a different way of thinking about creating a shot. For instance, like I would always have a camera on a tripod, and the tripod was on the ground. You would move the tripod up and down, but you really couldn't. You were kind of limited. And now I'm able to think way outside the box to where I can move that camera in 3D space anywhere I want to create an image that really hasn't been done before. And
that's exactly what I love about drone photography. Somebody was taking a shot. I was just scrolling through Instagram, and somebody was taking a shot of fireworks exploding right around it, which it's kind of like it's dangerous for the drone, I'm sure, but that perspective, we've all been watching fireworks forever.
From the ground level.
Yeah, from the ground, or maybe up on a building, but now you're literally inside the fireworks, and it's insane. And the things that you do a lot of P&W stuff, but when it comes to those projects, how do those projects come about? And I'm sure some of it started with you personally wanted to get into it, but what can you talk about some of the stuff you've done specifically with the aerial stuff?
It kind of started just like my photography started, where I saw this drone and I picked it up as a tool, wanting to just like create really cool content. And I kind of just refer to my photography because I just started creating cool content, and then just used social media and the web to kind of broadcast these images that I was creating. And I really started getting people that, had an interest in what I was doing. And when I saw that interest, I just like kept pursuing that, and it started just as, like shooting photos and like shooting individual clips. And at first I was just like posting individual photos of like drone photos I would get, or individual video clips just online, and like people were pretty stoked on it. And then
for sure,
and then projects started kind of being like incorporating drone a bit more, where I've seen like your drone work, like is that something you could do? And so like I kind of saw that as a kind of a business potential in a way.
Yeah, untapped market almost.
It's just kind of mind-blowing to me really how fast it has come, because just like taking it back to 2007 when I started, I just started as a photographer, and then I slowly went to video, and now drone is like 50% of what I do.
Oh
And
wow, that much.
it's been pretty awesome. For instance, back actually, I guess a year ago, we had this idea for a video called The Ridge of Dreams, and it's a ski film that's still kind of in the works right now, but just kind of a perspective on the whole thing. We were able to shoot this trailer for a ski film in 4 days, and that just like having an idea in your head and being able to create that with the drone and like putting a camera in perspective and being able to capture all this content. Long story short, we put this trailer together and we were able to pitch this idea to a pretty large company and get full funding to like make this dream a reality. Fast
Wow.
forward to from December of last year till May, I ended up being the drone cinematographer on this project, shooting for Yeti coolers up in
Awesome.
Haines, Alaska for 6 weeks. It was probably one of the most incredible times of my life. We were literally like living on a glacier. On man, it was so
That's a
amazing how like just how drone cinematography just took me to a glacier. Like I had never envisioned myself
yeah.
kind of going there.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
then planning to go and live in that environment and camp out and be and capture everything there. That's awesome. You just got back from Vietnam, right? A few weeks ago.
yeah, so I actually was pretty excited about. Well, I was excited about going to Vietnam, but I actually was wanting to bring my drone to Vietnam. One thing I guess I didn't realize at the time was Vietnam has very different laws and rules than we do here. And like right before I went to Vietnam, I was talking to a guy who just got back, and he's like, "Oh man, I would not bring my drone over there. Like they were confiscating drones at the airport." And I was a little sad to not bring the drone over there to Vietnam, but
Still a trip to Vietnam and the stuff you captured there was still amazing.
definitely, yeah, and I would definitely go back. But yeah, Vietnam is was a little interesting when it comes to drones. I actually learned that a guy over there was flying a drone and got caught, and he got kicked out of Vietnam for 5 years. So, like
Yeah,
the
you don't want that.
it's pretty severe.
I wanted to back up a little bit and ask about the projects that you get when it comes to traveling. Can you talk about how those started for you and what's the process like? Because it seems like a lot. It seems
uh
like a lot of stuff to plan, a lot of equipment to consider. And when you're traveling internationally, there's a wealth of stuff to deal with there. So, can you
Definitely.
talk a little bit about that?
I would say there's kind of two things. There's when I first started traveling, I didn't have as much gear compared to now, where it's like traveling with a lot more equipment, just because the tools that you bring along are just going to increase the production value quite a bit. Travel is something that's very exciting, but at the same time, sometimes overwhelming to where it makes you consider if you want to do that like full time. Like, you know,
Uh,
musicians like, Odessa, let's say, they're traveling. I don't even know the last time they were home. And so, traveling it seems like a bit excessive in that regard. But realistically, traveling for me started when I started shooting more weddings, and I got couples that would hit me up and they'd be like, "Hey, like, we'd love to, have you as our photographer. Would you mind traveling to here or there to capture something?" And at that point, early on, I was really excited to have the opportunity to go to these places, and I'm definitely still very excited to go to these places. But it's always kind of mind blowing to me that these images that I'm able to create put me in some really amazing spots. And sometimes I think everyone can get a little homesick. For instance, I was working on this feature film right before I left for Vietnam, like literally like 2 days before I left for Vietnam. I was on this feature film for I think it was 16 days, and I was doing all the drone work for the feature film, but not every single day I was flying drones. So there'd be just some down days and some days where like you were just shooting drone all day, but there's also some days where you're just sitting around waiting for the weather to come through. So there's kind of this saying especially in video production, called hurry up and wait. So it's like you're always, you're always hurrying to capture that light, or capture, these different things, but sometimes you just have to wait, and you literally have to sit there and wait for either the storm to roll through, or sometimes you have to wait for the talent. There's all these different factors that you kind of have to wait for. But
A
um
huge production.
totally. But I guess I was went off a little topic, but
That's okay.
as far as like the equipment, the equipment has kind of built up more and more, and it's kind of interesting. I pretty much always bring a camera with me wherever I go, because even if I'm not working, or like not being paid to go somewhere, more times than not, the photos that I take on a trip have paid off down the road. Like it's almost like this investment, like long-term investment.
That gives you full creative freedom in that moment when you're
Totally.
doing that. No one's telling you what to do. It's your eye. Everything's up to you, and that's relaxing. As the artist, you're relaxed in that environment. So for sure, that's gonna be you don't want to give up any opportunity to capture something like that. And so
Yeah, definitely. It's like the most, I would say it's like the purest or rawest form of like creativity is like, and some of the most
it,
magical moments have happened not only at that time, but the sun just like breaks through the clouds, and you only have like 2 minutes to capture the shot.
one of the projects on your website is the Haz-Mat Surfing.
Haz-Mat Surfing kind of came at an interesting time. How the idea actually happened was, so I was shooting this wedding. Before the wedding even happened, I flew down to meet the couple, and so I was taking these engagement photos for him, and just living up in Bellingham at the time, I think we can all say that the waves and like the ocean isn't very, it's pretty calm up here. And so every time I go somewhere that has waves or surf, I always want to try to go surfing. It was like the day after the photo shoot, and I really wanted to go surfing, and what had happened is it rained that night. Rain to us in Washington is like no big deal. But what I quickly learned is when it rains in Los Angeles, they shut down the beaches, and 10 billion gallons of sewage and just like contaminated water goes into Santa Monica Bay alone. It never even hit me to even think about how much contamination just like goes into the ocean, and so
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of what really sparked Haz-Mat Surfing, and just this fact that it's like, all right, so we can't go surfing. So, how can we go surfing? Well, people might in the future have to wear hazmat suits to still enjoy the things that we want to do. I didn't shoot hazmat surfing right away. It was probably like 6 months later that I just like was kind of developing this idea. And after talking with some people, I had all these ideas in my head, and I guess as a creative person, and the hardest thing for me is to take ideas from my head and make them visual for people to see and understand the way I see, and like
Imagined it. Yeah, the
exactly.
execution. I always call that the execution of it. Like I can see it in my head. I have the idea. I know what I want, but
Uh-huh.
executing it and translating that, communicating it properly. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. And so I spent some time to really develop this idea that I had, and it was interesting. Like it was one of the first times that I had some like mentorship on an idea this big, and I felt this idea was like kind of game changer, and so I really developed it from the ground up. I wanted to have the photo shoot down in Los Angeles, which was a lot more work and expensive than it was to just like shoot the hazmat surfing up here. And I wanted
Right.
to have that like infamous lifeguard tower in the background that everyone kind of knows as like, like California beaches. And I kind of wanted that California beach look, and And it was an interesting time and process because I really wanted to do this for myself and and to push this idea out there, but at the same time, you know, I was still pretty young. I didn't have a bunch of money, and so like financing the whole project came out of my own pocket. And so I did spend some time looking for, for some help, seeing if people wanted to jump on board to help either finance or like be a part of it. And it was like the idea was so far out there that, a lot of people or companies were like a little hesitant to jump on board. But
Yeah.
one company that actually really helped me out was I got in contact with the Surfrider Foundation, and they actually helped. So I also had to get just a ton of permits just to shoot the photos down there, and I had to get permits through the city of Los Angeles and the county of
Oh
of
man.
LA and like all this stuff. So linking up with the Surfrider Foundation was the best thing for me because we submitted to waive all these like $1,500 worth of fees. I worked with the Surfrider Foundation, and they submitted their nonprofit license to like which waived all these fees,
Oh,
which was
okay, yeah.
awesome. So that like really helped like bite the bill for at least like overhead expenses, and that was like Haz-Mat Surfing was definitely the most work that I had ever put in my entire life, because not only was I doing this, but at the time like photography and video was still like an expensive hobby for me, and
Uh,
I still had like a 9 to 5 job. I was a studio photographer taking photos 9 to 5, but I also was like coordinating with all these people down there with the Surfrider Foundation, trying to lock down these permits. I had to hire since people were going to be in the water, I had to hire a lifeguard. Just like all these things I had never even considered just to put on this photo shoot just started racking up, uh, and so it really took me a long time to like even get to the point to even shoot the photos. I I've been to LA a couple times and had met some really good friends down there and connections, and I ended up reaching out to like 50 people down in LA to like be part of this and help me out, because I was like a one man band. I was just like doing everything by myself, and from organizing it to all this stuff. So I asked like 50 people to come out, not expecting all 50 to come out. Like 10 people ended up coming out, which was great
nice.
because I
That's a
had
good
like
showing.
6 people in the water, and I had a couple people behind the camera. I met this guy, Mike Marshall, who helped me out quite a bit, and he brought out his underwater rig, and he helped me kind of get those underwater shots that I had the vision for, but just didn't have the tool to put the camera underwater. So a lot of
So that was a huge, huge project from start to finish, where you were really helming everything.
Oh, definitely
And
full steam ahead, and like it was also interesting actually. The day of the shoot, I only had a permit to shoot for 4 hours on the beach, and so I got there like 2 hours early, and the sun hadn't come up yet. Ended up it was cheaper to shoot in Venice Beach, and didn't know the beaches well enough to actually know where I wanted to shoot, but I knew I wanted like a lifeguard station, and I actually used Google Maps to like look at the where the lifeguard. The craziest thing was actually I was right next to the Venice Beach boardwalk. Like if you're looking at the ocean, the boardwalk is on my right. And at the beginning of the boardwalk, there's this big gate, and in the morning that gate is closed, so no one goes out there at night and whatnot. So
right.
when I got there in the morning, there was actually a line of homeless people lined up at this gate. And I was like scratching my head. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Well, they all had fishing poles, and like they were there to like when the gate opened, they were there to go like catch their food for the day. And as I'm shooting this project called Haz-Mat Surfing, where 10 billion gallons of wastewater goes into the ocean, and they're catching fish like right out there. And then one thing that really helped me kind of take that project and make it go viral. It was good timing and bad timing. The bad thing is it was a little rushed where I only had 2 weeks to edit all the photos and like put it out there. But the good thing is I had this opportunity to get on. I didn't really realize how a press release worked, but I got on to this feed for the month, and I was able to put my Haz-Mat Surfing like proposal and concept together in a press release form. With I had this like article that I had written up and included all his photos. And then once the press release went out, I really didn't know like what was going to happen. And literally within like 3 days, my inbox and on my email just like I think it literally just blew up
That's
because
awesome.
I, I was still doing the 9 to 5, and so I'd wake up in the morning, I'd check my email, and I would literally have like 40 emails in my inbox from. And it started small and like grew like wildfire, and it started with a couple blogs and websites picking up the photos, and then like huffing. Then I got this. It was crazy too because I knew where I wanted the photos on the web. Like I knew I wanted to reach some like bigger like news agencies and whatnot. But it was the craziest thing because I wanted to get onto Huffington Post, but one day I just literally got an email from Huffington Post wanting to put my photos on their website. And
That's
so it was
so
like
cool.
it was just crazy how what I was envisioning was happening, and really like the biggest thing, and I probably spent like close to like $2,000 of my own money with like airfare and
Not
travel and
including equipment, right, though.
exactly. So just like I felt I spent a lot of money in overhead, and I was totally cool with spending that money and just like letting it go and being able to like turn this whole thing into a creative process. What really I
So
did
is that
I
where
did
the a lot of the traveling
a
started? Was that kind of what kicked off a lot of that, or were you already doing that before the hazmat stuff, or before that project?
yeah, I wasn't like traveling as much, and traveling in the beginning was just for pleasure, and I kind of just learned over time that traveling could be paid for and financed through taking photos and videos. Sometimes like Vietnam, it's not paid for before you go. Sometimes you have to kind of you know take these photos and hope. Sometimes it's just all about like chance and like maybe I'll get a shot or two that I can sell a photo or a video shot. But for me, uh, trying to develop call to actions, and call to actions to me are kind of important. They're like the end of a book. Like you read the end of a book and like it just like it's like a cliffhanger, and there's like nothing happens. You're just like, well, like what's next? After Hazmat Surfing, I've really thought about creating call to actions in everything that I do, and trying to let someone see, let's say for instance, these photos Hazmat Surfing, and then being able to actually implement something that would help create better phone quality or what it may be. But
You want to make that a part of as
definitely,
many projects as you can
uh-huh.
moving forward. That's great. So almost, I mean, I've had some projects. One of my favorite projects was we had to create a public service announcement, and
Hmm.
and that's not necessarily what you're doing, but you're generating awareness. It's a similar concept,
Definitely.
um and I really liked that because you're also doing it. The coolest part about it was like whoever makes that, they're doing it on their own. It's almost they're volunteering their time and energy to create that for you because they have a message they want to get across, and more often than not, that's a pretty noble message, and they want people to hear. Where have you traveled? Can we have a
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that traveling locally at first, like, first starting out, and this might not be in order, but definitely started in Washington. Starting really small, actually, bringing it back. When I first started taking photos, I wanted to just learn more about, Bellingham and the town that we grew up in. And so I actually did a 365 project where I'd take a photo every day, and that kind
nice?
of led me to parts around town that I had really never even like discovered or even knew about. Photography and video made me kind of be more aware of my surroundings, really. Just starting locally and then kind of expanding out. So, starting in Bellingham and then, went down to Seattle and just wanted to know more about Seattle, and then moved to a broader Eastern Washington. Uh, I've always been drawn to the Washington coast, and so I kind of just like slowly tried to expand my horizons, and so it went from kind of exploring California a bit more,
Yeah, West Coast.
West Coast for sure, um, and then kind of Idaho and Montana. I love going over to
Beautiful areas.
Glacier
Yeah.
National Park, Yellowstone. I kind of
Right.
fell in love with Jackson Hole, Wyoming as well, and
Cool.
so it kind of like started in Washington, started expanding out down the West Coast, going east as well. Canada has always been hard to like do work in, and so I really haven't done too much work in Canada, but uh,
Interesting.
I I've done a little bit of work in Hawaii and a little bit of work in Mexico. I actually haven't been to Europe.
You mentioned Eastern Washington. Have you been around my area much shooting, like in the Palouse or around Spokane?
Totally. So Spokane is pretty awesome. I've driven by there. I have a friend who has a kind of a lake house up kind of like north towards the border a little bit, and
Yeah,
always
like Newman Lake or Liberty Lake.
think it Loon Lake
Oh yeah, there's that one as well. So
somewhere right up in there. But yeah, Eastern Washington has always how I always see it is like the Pacific Northwest has a lot of like green and blue colors in it, and it's always like really saturated colors. And then you go to Eastern Washington, and it's like the color palette over there is like completely different. It's actually at first, like when I first started taking photos in other places, I was actually really struggling just with the color because I was
oh
always
okay.
used to like saturated greens
Yep.
and really vibrant colors just because of the water and the how
Well,
much
yeah,
rain we were
vegetation is
getting.
just it gets to go. I mean, that for me going back to the west side, it was something. Once I moved over here and stayed over here, and then I would go visit back to Bellingham, you really notice that it feels overgrown. You know what I
Uh
mean?
huh.
Like it feels
Totally.
like it's almost out of control, but it's not. It's just it is. It's super dry over here.
Yeah,
And
and that
once you hit that central Washington, and it turns into, you know, deserts essentially, and it's just that hilly, grassy landscape, and it's just rocky and
yeah, it's a completely different color, and I also love it just how different it is. And the Columbia River Gorge is amazing, and I have
hmm
friends over in Walla Walla, and the rolling hills over there in the Wine, and all the way up to Spokane, where some more trees. But yeah, Eastern Washington is awesome, and I also love driving over to Eastern Washington over Highway 20. That's probably like one of the most beautiful drives that I've ever.
that's cool. And what about North Idaho around Coeur d'Alene, or like, or even in Idaho, southern Idaho, like Boise area? That's some pretty stuff too. If you drive along the river
Uh-huh.
and you just go down, it's amazing.
And it's interesting too because I also love the mountains and I love snowboarding, and a lot of what I have done for photo, video, drone has actually turned into a lot of uh, work in the wintertime. And so I've actually spent a lot of time not only traveling in the summertime but also traveling in the wintertime. And I shot a video series for outdoor research, and it was the tiny house series, and we were going around to all these different ski resorts to northern Idaho, Montana, like Bridger Bowl. We'd go over to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We
That's
e-
awesome.
even went down to like White Pass and kind of all over Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Oregon, and then kind of lower Washington as well. But it's also pretty interesting to see the same place in the summertime and then the differences in in the wintertime. And I just love seeing fresh snow on mountaintops, and especially with the drone now, being able to take the drone up and like almost be able to get those mountain top perspectives are pretty amazing. And now with the drone, there's things like icing on the blades and like keeping the
Oh
batteries
wow.
warm and not having the drone fall out of the sky because of it's too cold or something. And
Right.
so it's interesting to like there's all these new factors that have come into play with the drone, especially up in Alaska. When I was up there, it was it was pretty interesting to like deal with a whole set of new, I guess, just things you had to worry about.
When it comes to the drone, what is, let's say, let's walk me through what it's like if you're gonna take that thing out on a site and you got a project. Let's say it's like a just like an architecture building, or an architect wants you to shoot their building. What do you got to consider?
I would say the two biggest things you have to consider is where you're flying in. When you take off, you're in like federal aviation airspace, and so you have to consider where you're at, where your actual location is. Sometimes like a client will be like, "Oh yeah, like can you come out and take a photo of my house?" You're like, "Okay, yeah, sure," but then you don't realize the house is next door to an airport. So, you
Oh,
know,
okay.
finding out like where that location is definitely pretty important. The other thing is the weather. I learned pretty early on that flying in the rain is just terrible. Like you get water on the lens, the rain is
It's
gonna
just not
get
happening,
inside the
is it?
drone. It definitely not happen at all. So I've really been a lot more conscious of the weather as well. But like when a client hits me up, let's say to shoot a house and or architecture, I'm thinking about how many batteries, how long the shoot is going to last, if it's 1 hour or all day kind of thing. How many batteries I need to take, if I need to recharge batteries. Every drone shoot has been a little bit different, and I've actually wanted to do this for a while and put a Fitbit on my wrist
Okay.
because my adrenaline go like my heart rate just increases quite a bit
Yeah.
when I fly drone in any situation, just because there's so much more risk and liability putting something with lawnmower blades pretty much like in the air and having it spinning around capturing this footage. But knowing that this thing could fall out of the sky at any point, or hit a bird could fly into it, or there's a lot of different factors that kind of go on. So kind of understanding your surroundings and kind of spending more time, at least like when you're on the site, kind of establishing where are power lines and where are the trees that are going to be obstacles that I might have to
Right.
avoid. And
Yeah.
you know and it's one thing too if it's photos, like, because with photos you can just like put the drone in a spot in the air and take a photo. But if the client wants video, you also have to think about you know
Smoothly flying that thing while it's
very
recording.
exactly, very smoothly. And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't consider is the drone is going to start at ground level and it's going to go up to 50 feet, to see the top of the from like the ground level to the top of the roof. Well, are you going to tilt the camera very slowly as you rise up, or are you going to go
Right.
left to right as you rise up, or are you just going to go straight up and
And it's not something you just want to let them like see and then be like, okay, try this now. Okay, try this now. Okay, try this now.
oh,
It's kind of
totally.
like,
And everything has to be thought out beforehand, especially what the client doesn't realize is a battery can last like 20 minutes, but that 20 minutes actually goes pretty fast because once
right.
you're in the air, you're getting these shots, and the client's like, "Oh, like what about this over here?" And it's like, "We can do that, but we only have 5 minutes left." Or I guess just the battery life alone is kind of interesting and plays a really big role in flying the drone. How far you can, like, the limitations on, like, if you're trying to like rise up over a mountain, if that's going to take you 5 minutes just to like get the drone in position, and like you have enough battery life just to get it there, just to then get the shot and then have it come back.
What'll happen if it notices, like, is there automatic processes like certain battery level and it just forces return to you or something like that? Or
Yeah, totally. So like there's a couple different factors. Like if it's getting low on battery life, it pretty much has like a countdown to zero, and it realistically knows how far away it is from where it took off from. But at the same time, one thing that you really have to consider and just be good about being a drone pilot is, let's say it took you 5 minutes, let's say it just took you 5 minutes to get to this spot. And so you're thinking, okay, it's going to take me 5 minutes to go there, 5 minutes to go back. But now the wind has picked up, and now the wind is now blowing 40 miles an hour. And that 5 minutes is going to take a lot more energy to come back in a headwind
yeah.
than it was to fly there. And so when drones actually first came out, I I actually had to land the drone like a quarter mile away from me because
Oh, dang.
the wind had actually, the wind was pushing it farther than it could actually come back.
Scary,
Scary
scary times.
experiences where I was
My
like,
investment.
and then when it turns off, you either have like just enough battery life to like go and find it. It'll still like have a GPS signal you could like trace it back to,
Oh, dang.
or you have to like kind of see what the screen is seeing, like visualize what's around you and like where you're actually landing if the power does get cut and you're not able to see, the
So
last
then you have to turn
transmission.
into a hunter tracker type thing.
Totally. And like, and hopefully, when you're flying drone, you know where it is at all times in the air, and you're able to have a really good idea of, where it is from you and distance and all that. And but in the beginning there just weren't those safety procedures that there are now. But yeah, like one thing, if the drone gets too far away, it will tell you you need to return to home now, with having enough battery life. If you sometimes, like if you get on the other side of a building and the building is like full of cement or metal, you could lose signal really easily, and so you have to consider, if the signal drops out, what the drone is going to do. Usually it goes into a return to home feature where it goes straight up in the air to a desired height that you set it to, and then it comes straight back to you, which is great. But yeah, it's
It's
interesting.
a lot to consider, man. I mean, it's not just go out, spend a few $100 and then now you can do all this stuff. There seems like there's 100 different little things to plan.
Totally. And and I could totally be like a drone hobbyist and just go out for fun and fly around. But I
You've
really,
got a specific thing you're trying to capture for sure.
and that, and even like I was shooting for the city of Seattle this past summer, and I had to buy not only a liability policy but an aerial liability policy specifically for drone. And so I had to spend $1,000 just on aerial insurance for a $2 million aerial liability policy. And so it's like,
In
you know,
case you damage something.
yeah, just in case, like, the drone has a malfunction and let's say crashes into a car and damages the
Right,
car or
causes an
something.
accident or something. Okay, got it. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, but still,
Yeah, it's always a bit hairy for sure.
I mean, I follow other photographers and stuff like that, and I always admire photographers and videographers because you guys have to know the gear. I mean, musicians, they have to know their own gear and things like that in a different realm, but
Totally.
photo and video stuff, I mean, you watch you guys pack everything around and you watch you guys plan everything, and then you learn your processes like scouting and then shooting and then
It's really, I'm really thankful that we're given this chance to live in the time that we live in now, with especially like with drones, especially. It's just like created this whole new kind of way of thinking, really, and where I not only want to take it to like the highest cinematography level that I can, and just like shoot the most beautiful, amazing things with that, but I also see a drone being so much more than just a filming tool. and I've been trying to. I haven't quite developed the idea yet, but I've been trying to think about drones and other applications, and as far as like growing food and from farms and agriculture to
Oh, that's
being able
awesome.
to inspect things. And what I'm working on right now, you know, like I said before, I love the mountains, and I've also seen from the news people die in the mountains, and I've seen people get hurt
Right.
in the mountains, and maybe not so much even the mountains, but just in remote locations. And
Right.
what I'm trying to do right now, just for instance, three people have died up in Mount Baker this year, and just having a drone as a skill set and being able to fly it like as a pilot, I'm trying to develop a drone that has a thermal imaging camera on it, so that
Oh, what?
if people are stuck out in the wilderness, that
A remote. Yeah, you can. It's another way of detecting them. That's awesome.
some kind of it's like a helicopter. It's like you could either send a helicopter out and like go search for people, let's say, but at the same time, let's use this new resource and these new tools and send out an unmanned aircraft, doesn't use jet fuel, that doesn't have
Yeah.
doesn't risk
Or
two
more
other.
than one, send a net of them out there instead of one pilot and one helicopter. You got three or four people who are canvassing.
Totally, because right now they're just the only viable option is to send people, search and rescue people out into the environment
And what do they
when
got? Binoculars and possibly some other sensors on the
yeah, like
helicopter, but
I actually got really inspired on this trip up to Alaska. I went up to Fairbanks to go shoot, and I just happened to sit next to this guy who happened to fly drone, who does fly drones, but his job is to count how many polar bears are in the Arctic Circle. And how he does that is he has this like kind of grid pattern that he flies, and he has this drone that has a thermal cam on it, and he all he's looking for is a 1 degree temperature difference, and that
right,
1 degree temperature difference will signify that there's a polar bear under the ice, and that like that's their air hole, their blowhole that they're like breathing in and out of. And so
right.
like this little change in temperature is like signifies that there's kind of life under the snow, and
That's
that
pretty crazy.
kind of just gave me this idea that, man, I'd really love to provide, a service to search and rescue, to be kind of like on call in a way, to where, if someone goes missing, like let's send a drone out, let's run a grid pattern, and let's try and see if we can even see them, or like if there's signs of life, if they're moving or not. And maybe that drone can drop a care package, they can drop food or a emergency blanket to them. I always want to do more in life, and that's like one thing I'm trying to do. And
That's awesome. That's a great project to work towards.
Haz-Mat Surfing was huge for me, and I'm trying to to do another big project like that called Haz-Mat Fishing, and that's hopefully going to be shot this summer if I can get everything dialed.
Oh,
And
wow.
and then I have one more kind of bigger project, which also actually has come from seeing climate change and seeing at least the mountains and the snow being impacted. There's a project I've been working on and created called Old Man Winter, and I really haven't
Nice.
like put it out publicly yet. But Old Man Winter is like he's like Santa Claus, and like if you believe in Santa Claus, he will come, and it's like if you believe in Old Man Winter, he will bring the snow to the mountains, and if you believe in him, he will like kind of refresh the mountains with the essential snow that we need and the snowpack that we need for to even
To foster the when it comes time for the summer. Like, I mean, we noticed
exactly.
that in Spokane here. I mean, last year it wasn't that bad, but it was dry. I mean, the state has been on fire for what feels like two summers in a row.
Totally. That feels kind of not normal in a way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So are
Old
you
Man.
saying with Old Man Winter, like if you believe in yourself and changing how you live your life so that your impact is less, or is it if you believe and just can you expand on that a little bit?
Totally. So I would say the best way to describe it, obviously, like we know now that we've grown up that Santa Claus like isn't real, but the people who believe Santa Claus is real are the kids, and so these are like the stories that are passed down that we tell our kids about Santa Claus, and the kids really believe it, you know, like they can't wait for Santa Claus and all that. So Old Man Winter in a way is like if you if you believe in Old Man Winter, he will bring the snow to the mountains, and you know it's not only just for for little kids to believe in Old Man Winter, but more of a more of like a bigger picture. Like if we believe in
Yeah,
winter, then we can, and then if we also see the climate heating up and whatnot, maybe we can like take these steps to either maybe not bring back winter, but kind of take
start to
steps.
reverse the course a little bit.
Exactly, and so like Old Man Winter, he's like a bear, but he instead of hibernating in the winter time, he actually hibernates in the summertime and then wakes up at the first sign of winter. And there's all these experiences in my life that have kind of brought it to where the story's at now that I'm writing, and right now it's like in script form to be turned into this video that I'm gonna shoot
Oh, that's
for it.
awesome. So what do they would they call that? Are you writing technically a screenplay then, or what would you call that in like technical
Yeah,
jargon?
it would probably be called a script, but I've also been since you know I came up with the idea. I have all the like how all the shots are going to happen in my mind, and so I've also been writing out kind of like a technical like camera shot list as well that
Oh,
goes like
cool.
parallel with the script and the story. So like there's a story, and then like on the right side and then on the left side there's kind of like a shot list. So it's like a combo. It's like a shot list and a script kind of all in one that I'm writing out. And it's kind of it's a shorter story right now. It's
Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm excited to see you develop these projects for sure. If you're ready, we could hop into some resources and then I could let you go because it's getting a little late. But
totally.
um, do you
Yeah.
have something you want to share?
Yeah. So I guess, resources for me, a lot of people don't know what they want to do in life, and that I think that's totally okay. I think just, starting with something, whether it sparks your interest and like trying it out or going with it. And sometimes you don't really know how to do things along the way, but at least for me and photography starting out, um, let's just take like let's say home architecture for instance. Like I didn't know
Okay.
anything about taking photos, and then home architecture, you need a wide angle lens, you need lighting if you want these different looks, and how do you create these looks? Well, so I started to dive into YouTube a lot, and the internet is just an amazing wealth of knowledge, and not everything is like true and all that, but I think
Right.
the internet
But when it comes to like somebody's like, hey, I solved this problem this way,
totally.
it's either is real or it's not.
Yeah,
But
and
go
like
ahead, sorry.
how to light a subject with three lights. You could go out and like learn from a lighting expert, or you could do a lot of research and like study these different lighting techniques. So I was I was studying the techniques that I wanted to implement into my photography, into my video, like shooting the northern lights at night, is way different than shooting when it's sunny out kind of thing. So, just using the internet as a really good piece of knowledge to pull from, and I think the
Tutorials and
other yeah, tutorials and learning from other people, and then I think the other biggest thing is jumping off and just like really just going full steam ahead with what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about it, I think you can do some really great things in life. And
to kind of reinforce that trend of like, we were talking about it before we kicked this off. Like we were a lot our generation was college was the route,
totally.
we've all and we're 30s, we're in our 30s now, we just started and if you look back, it might not have been the route for the majority of us. You
Uh-huh.
know, I certainly struggled finding out what direction to actually take a stake in, and the stuff I was interested in, I figured, like you said, you Google your issues on the internet, or your
Yeah.
problems with the software, or I don't know how to start something or do this, or has anybody else experienced this, and you just get comfortable doing that and not afraid of
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I'm gonna mess something up, you know. Like, no, you're not.
Totally.
You can just undo it and just dive in, figure it out. There's so many people have spent so much time putting together way super nice videos to teach you how to do anything. Like, I started doing work on my own car because I was never hands on like that when it came to being a mechanic. I just didn't understand cars, never was really taught
Uh-huh.
how cars work. And with YouTube, it's like I can change my own brakes. You
Yeah.
know, I started changing my own oil, and those are really simple things. But for somebody like me who had no experience at all, you know, I'm proud of that. Like, I feel there's a real sense of accomplishment. You know,
Totally.
but
I could say the same. I was struggling for money at one point, and my clutch went out, and I ended up going to the library, finding this book on how to change a clutch, and
no
it
way.
took me like, I had two friends to help me, but we spent 20 hours
Yeah,
changing the clutch, and we followed each step, but we the same clutch is still in the car that I still drive, and everything has
working
there's never
fine.
been a
Yeah.
problem. And
Why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you, and your website and everything, and how they can get in touch? And
yeah, totally. So I'm just gonna spell out my last name because everyone gets it wrong, and
no problem.
even if they hear it, everyone like
They're not gonna. Yep.
switches
Yep.
the letters around, but it's Dyrland, Dyrland Productions, Productions at gmail.com, and DyrlandProductions.com is my website. But
Nice.
yeah, I got a little Instagram going on. That's at
Yep.
Dyrland Productions, and then at DP Drones is I have like a separate drone specific Instagram that I've been posting a lot of photos and videos to. And
Yep.
then, the simplest thing nowadays is everyone can find me on Facebook, Michael Dyrland. I post most of my most relevant content on there, and then it usually goes to my website and Instagram. But
Cool.
yeah, Michael Dyrland at Facebook, or yeah, at Facebook, and then I also have a little Dyrland Productions page on Facebook as well. But
Cool.
now,
Well,
now is it time for me to interview you?
yeah, sure, if you want. Yeah. I've been trying to learn the balance of being a host, but also sharing the journey of this project with the audience as well.
From when I knew you in high school till now, it's cool to see you pick a podcast up, and the direction that I take. I hope you're taking this direction because it inspires you, and
Oh,
pushes
for sure.
pushes you as well.
Everybody who's been on this or who I've had on the guest, who I've asked to be a guest and hasn't been recorded yet, it's all motivators. I mean, the people who are doing something and creating content, that's what's been sticking with my mind, is like, there's so much to consume out there.
Uh-huh.
But if you're having a hard time resonating with what's out there, then you better either look harder or create something yourself, you know.
Totally.
And part of the reason, you know, when we were in high school and stuff, I just started getting into computer courses. We had that computer class where you could do like Rhino and
Yeah.
stuff.
Totally.
And that was super fun. I wish I would have found that a little earlier in high school, but it's fine. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't go into that in college. I tried to just, I said this before, I was doing what my peers were doing, and so I took a break and then reevaluated what my strengths were and went back to computers and got into digital media. And so that's what's been the most like attractive thing to me as far as like when it comes time for like a personal project, is like I enjoy producing the audio. I enjoy producing the graphics or learning how to create the videos,
Uh-huh.
and putting everything together, and like you're saying, the pre-production stuff. this is the project that I really slowed down, thought a lot about how it was going to work. And, of course, what I had in the beginning wasn't what it is now. Things changed, and, you got feedback or ideas kind of morphed and whatnot. So this is something that I'm trying to use. I have a freelance business for graphic design on the side.
Nice.
And so from all the different stuff I learned in that, this is the project that I'm trying to take my experience from that, but also learn something new, which is me recording my voice and putting it out there, and that's the content. You know what I mean? Like, it's got some supplemental stuff with some visuals and things, but really the challenge is, can I engage creatives and entrepreneurs in an interview that the audience is going to find entertaining or informative?
Totally.
And that's the challenge, and doing that better each time, I guess.
That's awesome, because I think there's people that are really good writers, and they publish books, and there's people that
right
are, let's say, really good photographers, and they do that. But there's also people that TV hosts and podcast hosts, and that's like audio is another form of like putting your voice and putting content out there. And
and connecting.
I'm a terrible writer, so I don't publish books or write things like that. But it's really cool how there's so many different ways of kind of putting yourself out there. If you don't have a voice, your voice can be in many different forms in many different ways.
Yeah, and this came up in Jonathan's episode for sure, is that there's just never before has it been this easy.
Totally.
Is what he was saying. It's never been this easy to put yourself out there and create a message.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And to do it for the right reasons, and to do it, and if you're doing it for yourself, which in this case, it's kind of, this is kind of for me, this is a challenge for me in a project. I'm indulging something by doing this, but hopefully somebody else gets something out of it, and it can steer someone or motivate someone to do something for themselves, productive, and create content in their own.
And I love listening to podcasts, like going from Bellingham to Seattle. I know it's like an hour and a half, and I love those hour podcasts where I can listen the whole time. I feel inspired by the end of it, and just like there might just be that one little golden nugget of information that
for sure
that you take away from. And hopefully, like I said from before, like taking away and like having a call to action and being able to do something and implement something is huge. And I hope everyone is able to
that's a good point.
Take something away.
Oh, I hope so too. You had great insight on what it's like with your right, and it's a fairly new industry, and we're gonna see how it develops over time, because it's brand spanking new. But I loved the insight to aerial stuff and the drone photography and videography. It's amazing. So everybody got to check them out.
Yeah.
Give them a follow.
DP Drones.
DP Drones. It's awesome. It's great stuff. So again, thanks so much, dude. I'm hopefully get 2 more episodes recorded next week, possibly just 1, but so far I'm ahead of schedule, and I'll be able to give everybody my promised content of 1 episode every other week. It looks like Tuesday is going to be the day.
Nice.
So yeah. So Mike, thank you again. Thank everybody else who's been helping with producing the show and getting everything together, providing feedback, and the support. So everybody take care. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, take care, everyone.